My twin sister hid my diagnosis to call me dramatic. But at the will reading, the doctor exposed her. My name is Helena Moore. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, I've been known as the dramatic twin. The one who feels too much, complains too much, the one who always needs attention. At least that's what my sister Vanessa told everyone, and everyone believed her. Before I tell you what happened at that reading, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? If you've ever been the one nobody believed, if you've ever had your pain dismissed as weakness, if you know what it's like to doubt your own reality because everyone around you said you were wrong, leave a like right now and subscribe. Because what I'm about to tell you, you need to hear until the end. Everything started long before I got sick. It started the day our mother died. I was 17. Vanessa was 17. Same day, same hour, same womb. But from the moment we were born, we were never treated the same. Our mother, Caroline, was the soft place we could land. She saw us as individuals, not as a matching set. She understood that being identical on the outside didn't mean we were identical on the inside. When she died from a sudden aneurysm, it felt like the oxygen left our house. What remained was our father, Edward Moore, and a silence that stretched across every room. Dad wasn't cruel. He wasn't absent. He was just deeply, profoundly uncomfortable with emotion. He'd built a successful logistics company from nothing, and he understood spreadsheets better than he understood feelings. After Mom died, he threw himself into work. The company grew. The money came. But the warmth never returned. Vanessa adapted immediately. She became efficient, controlled, strong. She learned to speak Dad's language, the language of logic and results. She presented solutions, not problems. She never cried where he could see. I didn't adapt as well. I cried at Mom's funeral. I cried for weeks after. I talked about missing her, about the emptiness, about how strange it felt to wake up every morning and remember she was gone. Dad would nod, pat my shoulder awkwardly, and leave the room. Vanessa would roll her eyes. "You need to move on, Helena," she'd say. "Mom wouldn't want you falling apart like this." But I wasn't falling apart. I was grieving. There's a difference. That's when the pattern started. Anytime I expressed something Dad found uncomfortable, Vanessa was there to reframe it, to translate my emotions into something more palatable, something more acceptable. She's just being dramatic? She's always been sensitive. Don't encourage her, Dad. She'll get over it. And Dad believed her, because Vanessa's version was easier, simpler, less messy. We grew up in Plano, a suburb north of Dallas where everything looked perfect from the outside. Neat lawns, good schools, friendly neighbors who waved but never got too close. Our house was a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a sprinkler system that ran like clockwork. Everything was organized. Everything was controlled, including me. By the time we graduated high school, the roles were set. Vanessa was the strong one, the reliable one, the one Dad could count on. I was the sensitive one, the complicated one, the one who needed to toughen up. We both went to college, University of Texas at Austin, different majors. Mine was literature. Hers was business. After graduation, Vanessa came back to Plano and started working with Dad at the company. I moved to Austin and worked for a nonprofit. For a few years, things were peaceful. Distance helped. We saw each other on holidays, exchanged polite texts, maintained the appearance of closeness without the friction of daily contact. Dad's company kept growing. He bought a bigger house, drove a nicer car, started talking about legacy and estate planning. Vanessa was right there beside him, learning the business, positioning herself as the natural successor. I was happy for her. I really was. But then something changed. I started feeling off. Nothing dramatic at first, just tired. More tired than I should have been. I'd wake up after 8 hours of sleep and feel like I hadn't slept at all. My joints ached. My head felt foggy. Some days I'd forget simple words mid-sentence, like my brain was buffering. I ignored it for months, figured it was stress, bad diet, not enough exercise. I changed my routine, ate better, joined a gym. But the symptoms didn't improve. They got worse. That's when the panic started creeping in. Late at night, lying awake, I'd Google my symptoms and convince myself I was dying. Then morning would come, I'd feel slightly better, and I'd tell myself I was overreacting, just like Vanessa always said. I finally made an appointment with my doctor. She ran blood work. Everything came back normal. She suggested anxiety. Gave me a referral to a therapist. I went. The therapist was kind, but after a few sessions, she gently suggested that maybe something physical was being overlooked. So I went back. Different doctor this time. More tests. Still nothing conclusive. That's when I called Vanessa. I don't know what's wrong with me, I said. My voice cracked. I hated how weak I sounded. There was a pause on the other end. Then she sighed. Have you considered that maybe nothing's wrong? That maybe you're just stressed? I've been to 3 doctors, Vanessa. And none of them found anything serious, right? Well, no, but then maybe you need to stop looking for problems that aren't there. I wanted to argue, to explain that something was genuinely wrong, that I knew my own body, but the words died in my throat. Because what if she was right? What if I was just being dramatic again? I turned 28 that year, and that's when everything got worse. The episode started happening at work. I'd be in the middle of a meeting and suddenly feel like the room was tilting. My vision would blur at the edges. My hands would shake. I'd excuse myself, lock myself in the bathroom, and wait for it to pass. It always passed. But then it would happen again. My coworkers started noticing. Are you okay? They'd ask, concern written across their faces. I'd smile and nod and say I was fine, just tired, just stressed, just dramatic. I took sick days, more than I should have. My supervisor pulled me aside one afternoon, her expression careful and measured. Helena, is everything all right? You've been out a lot lately. I know, I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some health issues. Have you seen a doctor? Several. They can't figure out what's wrong. She nodded slowly. Well, take care of yourself, but I need you to understand that we can't sustain this pattern indefinitely. I understood. I was becoming unreliable. A problem. The kind of employee who generated paperwork and awkward conversations. The kind of person my father had always been uncomfortable with. I found a specialist in Houston. It took 3 months to get an appointment. 3 months of worsening symptoms, of canceled plans, of friends who stopped inviting me out because I always had to say no at the last minute. The specialist was different from the other doctors. She listened, really listened. She didn't dismiss my symptoms or suggest therapy within the first 5 minutes. She asked detailed questions about family history, environmental factors, triggers. She ordered tests I'd never heard of. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Helena, I'd like you to come in to discuss your results. My stomach dropped. Doctors don't ask you to come in unless it's serious. I drove to Houston alone, sat in the waiting room alone, followed the nurse back to the exam room alone. When the doctor came in, she had a folder in her hands and an expression that was professional but kind. I have your diagnosis, she said. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. She explained it in terms I struggled to absorb. It was a functional neurological disorder, not life-threatening in the immediate sense, but chronic, progressive without proper management. It affected how my brain processed signals from my body. The fatigue, the cognitive issues, the physical symptoms, they were all real. They were all connected, and they weren't going to just go away. Is it curable? I asked. No, but it's manageable. With the right treatment plan, most patients maintain good quality of life. Treatment plan? Medication, physical therapy, regular monitoring, lifestyle adjustments. I nodded, trying to process it all. Part of me felt relief. It had a name. It was real. I wasn't making it up. But another part felt terrified. This was permanent. This was my life now. Do you have someone who can drive you home? The doctor asked. This is a lot to take in. I'm okay, I said automatically. I can drive. But when I got to my car, I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to absorb what I'd just been told. Then I called Vanessa. Hey, I said when she answered. I got a diagnosis. Silence. Then, what kind of diagnosis? I explained it as best as I could, using the words the doctor had used. Functional neurological disorder. Chronic but manageable. Real. Okay, Vanessa said slowly. So what does that mean? It means I'm not making it up. It means there's actually something wrong. Did she say it was serious? She said it needs to be managed, that I'll need ongoing treatment. Another pause. Well, at least now you know. That's good, right? Yeah, I guess. Do you need anything? No, I'm okay. All right, well, keep me updated. She hung up. I sat there in the parking lot, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Over the next few weeks, I started the treatment plan. Medication that made me nauseous for the first few days. Physical therapy appointments that left me exhausted. A neurologist I had to see every month to monitor progression. It was expensive, time-consuming, overwhelming. But I did it, because the alternative was letting the disorder take over completely. I called Dad to tell him, kept it brief, factual. He listened in that quiet way he always did, the way that made you feel like you were reporting quarterly earnings instead of a medical diagnosis. So you'll be all right? He asked. With treatment, yeah, it's manageable. Good, that's good. A pause. Do you need help with medical bills? No, Dad, I'm okay. All right, well, let me know if that changes. That was it. No questions about what it felt like. No concern about how I was coping. Just logistics. A few weeks later, Vanessa called. I've been thinking about your diagnosis, she said, and I feel bad that I wasn't more supportive. I want to help. I was surprised. Vanessa wasn't usually the type to admit fault or offer help unprompted. That's okay, I said. I'm managing. No, really, I want to understand what you're dealing with. Can I come to one of your appointments? Maybe talk to the doctor myself? Something about her tone made me hesitate, but I pushed the feeling aside. She was my sister, my twin. Maybe she was finally trying to bridge the gap between us. Sure, I said. That would actually be really helpful. Great. Just let me know when your next appointment is. 2 weeks later, Vanessa drove down to Houston with me. We didn't talk much on the drive. She asked a few questions about my symptoms, my medication, my daily routine. I answered honestly, hoping she'd finally understand. In the exam room, the doctor reviewed my progress, explained the long-term management plan, answered Vanessa's questions with the same patience she'd shown me. Vanessa nodded along, asked intelligent questions, took notes on her phone. She seemed genuinely engaged, genuinely concerned. When we left, she gave me a hug. I'm glad you're getting help, she said, and I'm sorry I didn't take it seriously before. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. That means a lot. On the drive back, she was quieter. I figured she was processing everything she'd learned. I didn't push. I was just grateful she'd come. But I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that Vanessa wasn't there to support me. She was there to control the narrative. Because the next time Dad asked about my health, Vanessa was the one who answered. It's not that serious, she told him. The doctor said it's mostly stress-related. Helena just needs to manage her anxiety better. I found out later, months later, that she'd been doing this the whole time. Filtering what Dad knew, what other family members knew, reframing my diagnosis as something manageable, something minor, something that didn't require concern or accommodation. She's always been dramatic, Vanessa would say. The doctor even said a lot of it is psychological. The doctor had said no such thing, but I didn't know that yet. So I kept trying, kept managing, kept pushing through the bad days and celebrating the slightly less bad ones, and I kept believing my sister was on my side. I noticed something was wrong at Thanksgiving. I'd driven up to Plano despite feeling terrible that week. The medication wasn't working as well as it had initially, and my doctor was considering adjustments. I was exhausted. My joints ached. My head felt like it was wrapped in cotton. But it was Thanksgiving. Family tradition. I couldn't miss it. Dad had invited some cousins, an aunt and uncle I hadn't seen in years. The house smelled like turkey and pie. Vanessa had helped with the cooking, playing hostess alongside Dad. They moved around the kitchen with easy coordination, a team that didn't need me. During dinner, my Aunt Carol asked how I was doing. "She's fine," Vanessa answered before I could speak. She had some health stuff earlier this year, but it turned out to be nothing serious. I looked up sharply. "That's not exactly—" "You're feeling better now, though, right?" Vanessa interrupted, smiling at me. "The doctor said it was mostly anxiety." "The doctor didn't say that." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Well, she said it was manageable, that with some lifestyle changes, you'd be fine." Aunt Carol looked between us, sensing tension. "Well, I'm glad you're doing better, sweetie." I wanted to correct her, to explain that I wasn't doing better, that this was chronic, that it would never fully go away. But everyone was staring at me, and Vanessa's expression was pleasant but firm, and suddenly I felt like the difficult one again. The dramatic one. The one making Thanksgiving awkward. So I smiled and nodded and said nothing. Later, in the kitchen, I confronted Vanessa. "Why did you tell them it was nothing serious?" She was loading the dishwasher, her movements precise and efficient. "Because it's not. You're managing it, right?" "Managing isn't the same as cured, Vanessa." "I know that, but there's no point worrying everyone, especially Dad." "Worrying them with what? The truth?" She turned to face me, her expression patient but patronizing. The same look she used to give me when we were kids and I'd cry over something she considered trivial. "Helena, you have a condition that requires medication and lifestyle adjustments. You're not dying, you're not disabled, you're just going to have to deal with some limitations. There's no need to make it into this huge, tragic thing." "I'm not making it into anything. I'm just being honest about what I'm dealing with." "And that's fine, but not everyone needs to know every detail. It just makes people uncomfortable." There it was, the real reason, not protecting me, protecting everyone else from my inconvenient reality. "Dad should know," I said quietly. "He's my father. Dad has enough to deal with. The company's expanding. He's stressed. He doesn't need to worry about something that's already being handled." "By me. It's being handled by me." Vanessa closed the dishwasher and turned it on. "Exactly, so there's no problem." I left the next morning, earlier than I'd planned, made an excuse about work. Dad barely noticed. He was already in his study, reviewing contracts. Over the next year, I started noticing a pattern. Anytime someone in the family asked about my health, Vanessa had already provided her version of events, and her version was always simpler, cleaner, less concerning. Just stress. Mostly psychological. She's handling it. I tried correcting the narrative a few times, but it was exhausting. And every time I did, I saw the same look on people's faces. The look that said I was overreacting, making a big deal out of nothing, being dramatic. So eventually, I stopped trying. My health continued to deteriorate, slowly, gradually. The kind of decline you don't notice day to day, but when you look back over months, you realize how much ground you've lost. I had to cut back my hours at work. Eventually, I had to leave the nonprofit entirely. The cognitive issues were getting worse. I'd forget appointments, lose track of conversations, struggle to focus on tasks that used to be easy. I applied for disability. The process was humiliating. Forms and doctor's notes and interviews where you had to explain, in detail, all the ways your body had betrayed you. When I told Dad I was applying, he was quiet for a long moment. "Is it really that bad?" he finally asked. "Yes, Dad, it is." "Vanessa said you were doing better." I closed my eyes. Vanessa doesn't know what she's talking about. "She went to your appointment with you. She said the doctor—" "Dad, I'm applying for disability. That should tell you how bad it is." Another long pause. "All right, if you need help with anything, let me know." But he didn't ask what I needed help with, didn't offer to come visit, didn't question why his daughter, who used to be healthy and capable, was now too sick to work. He just accepted Vanessa's version and moved on. The disability application was denied. Twice. My condition was real, but apparently not severe enough to qualify. I appealed, got rejected again, hired a lawyer, spent money I didn't have fighting bureaucracy that didn't care. I moved into a smaller apartment, Sold my car and started using rideshare for medical appointments. Stopped seeing friends because I couldn't afford to go out and didn't want to explain why. I was 32 years old and my life had shrunk to the size of a studio apartment and a handful of doctor's offices. Meanwhile, Vanessa was thriving. She'd been promoted to vice president of operations. Dad was talking about retirement, about passing the company to her. She'd bought a house in a nice neighborhood, drove a new SUV, took vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. Not that I begrudged her success. I didn't. But the contrast was stark and painful and completely invisible to everyone else, because according to Vanessa, I was doing fine. One night, I called my Aunt Carol. I don't know why. Maybe because she'd always been kind when we were kids. Maybe because I was desperate for someone to see me. "Helena, how are you, sweetheart?" "I'm okay. Just wanted to check in." We chatted for a bit. Small talk, safe topics. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Vanessa mentioned you've been struggling with anxiety. I'm glad you're getting help for that." "What?" "She said you've been seeing a therapist, that it's been really helpful." I had seen a therapist, years ago, before the diagnosis, but Vanessa was using that detail to reframe everything else. "Aunt Carol, I don't have an anxiety disorder. I have a neurological condition." "Oh," a pause. But Vanessa said, I know what Vanessa said, but she's wrong. Silence on the other end. Uncomfortable. Awkward. "Well," Aunt Carol finally said, her voice careful, "I'm sure whatever you're dealing with, you'll get through it." We hung up shortly after. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling something that went beyond hurt, beyond anger, betrayal. My twin sister, the person who'd shared a womb with me, who'd grown up beside me, who supposedly knew me better than anyone, was systematically erasing my reality. And she was doing it so smoothly, so convincingly, that even I had started to doubt myself. Maybe I was making too much of this. Maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe I was just weak. Those thoughts circled my mind on the bad days, the days when I couldn't get out of bed, when the medication made me sick, when I looked at my life and couldn't recognize it anymore. And then I'd remember the doctor's words. Real. Chronic. Manageable but not curable. I wasn't making it up. But Vanessa had convinced everyone else that I was. 2 years later, Dad called. His voice sounded different. Tired. "Helena, I need to tell you something." My heart jumped. "What's wrong?" "I'm sick." He had cancer, aggressive. Treatable, but no guarantees. He'd known for a few weeks, but had waited to tell us until he had a clear treatment plan. "Dad, I'm so sorry. What can I do?" "Nothing right now. I'm handling it. Vanessa's helping coordinate everything." Of course she was. "I want to come up, stay with you for a bit." "That's not necessary. I'm fine." "Dad, Helena, I don't need you worrying about me. Focus on taking care of yourself." The call ended shortly after. I sat there feeling helpless and small. I wanted to be there for him, but he didn't want me there, and I knew why. Because Vanessa had convinced him I was too fragile, too dramatic, too much work. The truth was, he was dying, and I was invisible. Dad fought the cancer for 8 months. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Vanessa kept me updated through brief text messages. Treatment going well, slight setback, numbers improving. I offered to visit multiple times. Each time, Vanessa had a reason why it wasn't a good idea. "He's too tired for visitors." "The immune system is compromised. Can't risk exposure." Maybe next month when he's feeling stronger. Next month never came. He died on a Tuesday morning in March. Vanessa called me from the hospital. "He's gone." 2 words, flat, factual. I couldn't breathe. What happened? I thought he was doing better. Complications, it happened fast. A pause. I was with him. Of course she was. "I'll come up right now." "There's nothing to do right now. The funeral home is handling everything. I'll let you know when we have details." She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my bathroom floor and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Not just for Dad, but for the relationship we'd never had, the conversations we'd never have, the chance for him to really see me that had just evaporated. The funeral was 4 days later. Small, dignified, very Edward Moore. The service was at a chapel in Plano, attended by business associates, a few family members, neighbors who'd known Dad for decades. I wore a black dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, took a rideshare because I couldn't afford to rent a car, arrived early because I wanted a moment alone before everyone else showed up. Vanessa was already there. She looked perfect. Black suit, simple jewelry, hair pulled back, the picture of composed grief. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Not sadness, something else, something I couldn't quite identify. "You made it," she said. "Of course I made it. How are you holding up?" "About as well as you'd expect." She nodded. "It's been a difficult time." We stood there in awkward silence. Two identical faces with nothing to say to each other. The service was exactly what Dad would have wanted. Respectful, efficient, no excessive emotion. The pastor spoke about his business success, his work ethic, his commitment to his family. Vanessa gave a eulogy about his legacy and values. I sat in the front row and said nothing. At the reception afterward, held at Dad's house, people offered condolences. "Your father was a remarkable man. He'll be greatly missed. You must be so proud." I nodded and thanked them and felt like I was underwater. Everything was muffled, distant, unreal. Vanessa worked the room with practiced ease, thanking people for coming, discussing business transitions, playing the role of grieving but capable daughter. The one who'd been there, the one who'd held his hand at the end. I was just the other one. At some point, a man I didn't recognize approached me. He was older, maybe late 60s, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. "You're Helena, aren't you?" "Yes." "I'm Dr. Richard Chen. I was one of your father's oncologists." "Oh, thank you for taking care of him." He studied my face for a moment. "I wanted to tell you something. Your father spoke about you quite a bit in the last few months." That surprised me. "He did?" "Yes. He seemed to be processing some regrets, things he wished he'd handled differently." My throat tightened. "What kind of things?" "Family matters mostly. He didn't go into specifics, but I got the sense he was trying to make peace with some past decisions." Dr. Chen glanced across the room at Vanessa, then back at me. "He asked me to be present at the reading of his will. I'll be there." "Why would he ask that?" "I'm not entirely sure, but I promised him I would, so I wanted to let you know." Before I could ask anything else, Vanessa appeared beside us. "Dr. Chen, thank you so much for coming." "Of course." He gave me one more meaningful look. "I'll see you next week, Helena." He walked away. Vanessa watched him go, her expression unreadable. "What did he want?" she asked. "Just offering condolences." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. "The estate lawyer wants to meet with us next Tuesday for the will reading. Can you make it?" "I'll be there." "Good. It should be straightforward." Dad was very organized about these things. Something in her tone made me uneasy. Too confident. Too certain. The days between the funeral and the will reading crawled by. I kept thinking about what Dr. Chen had said. Regrets. Past decisions. Why would Dad ask his oncologist to be at a will reading? I called the estate lawyer's office, hoping to get some information. The receptionist was polite but firm. "Mr. Morrison will address all questions at the reading." "Can you at least tell me who else will be there?" A pause. "The immediate family and any parties your father specifically requested." Requested? "I can't provide details over the phone. You'll understand everything on Tuesday." When Tuesday came, I took a rideshare to the lawyer's office in downtown Dallas. Modern building, glass and steel, the kind of place that whispered money and power. Vanessa was already in the conference room when I arrived. She sat at a large mahogany table, perfectly composed, reviewing something on her phone. She looked up when I walked in. "Helena." A slight smile. "Ready for this?" "Not really." It won't take long. Dad's will is very clear. The lawyer, Mr. Morrison, entered a moment later, late 50s, conservative suit, the kind of professional demeanor that revealed nothing. Good morning, ladies. Thank you for being here. We're just waiting for one more person. Vanessa frowned. Who? Your father made a specific request. Here he is now. The door opened. Dr. Chen walked in. Vanessa's face went absolutely still. Not shocked, not confused, something else. Afraid. Mr. Morrison gestured for the doctor to sit. Dr. Chen, thank you for honoring your commitment to Edward. Of course. Vanessa found her voice. I don't understand. Why is Dad's doctor here? Mr. Morrison opened a folder. Your father wanted Dr. Chen present to provide context for certain decisions he made in the final revision of his will. Final revision? Vanessa's voice had an edge now. When did he revise his will? 3 months before he passed. 3 months, that would have been during his treatment, when he was lucid, when he was, according to Dr. Chen, processing regrets. I want to begin by reading the letter your father left, Mr. Morrison said. This was to be read before the distribution of assets. He unfolded a single sheet of paper, Dad's handwriting. I recognized it immediately, and as Mr. Morrison began to read, everything changed. Mr. Morrison's voice was steady as he read. To my daughters, Vanessa and Helena, if you are hearing this, I am gone, and I can no longer fix the mistakes I made while I was here. I spent my life building a company, accumulating wealth, and somehow convinced myself that was the same as being a good father. It wasn't. I felt tears start to well up. Across the table, Vanessa sat perfectly still. I failed both of you in different ways. Vanessa, I taught you that strength meant suppressing emotion, that love was transactional, that value came from what you could produce. I'm sorry for that. But this letter is primarily about Helena. My name in his handwriting, my name in his final words. Helena, I was told repeatedly that you were dramatic, difficult, too sensitive. I believed those things because they were easier to believe than the alternative, which was that I had failed to see you, to protect you, to value you as you deserved. I chose comfort over truth. And in doing so, I allowed you to suffer in ways I am only now beginning to understand. Mr. Morrison paused, glanced at Dr. Chen, then continued. 3 months ago, during my treatment, I had a conversation with Dr. Chen about family dynamics and how illness reveals truth. I mentioned, casually, that one daughter was helping me while the other was dealing with anxiety issues. Dr. Chen asked what kind of anxiety issues. When I described what I'd been told, he went very quiet. Then he asked me a direct question. Had anyone mentioned a neurological diagnosis? The room felt like all the air had been sucked out of it. I said no. He asked if he could speak frankly. I said yes. And what he told me changed everything. Mr. Morrison looked up at Dr. Chen. Doctor, would you like to explain? Dr. Chen turned to look at me, his expression gentle. Helena, I didn't know you were Edward's daughter until that conversation. But when he described your symptoms, your history, I recognized the pattern immediately. I asked if I could contact your neurologist with his permission, just to verify. Your doctor confirmed what I suspected. He turned to Vanessa. Your sister doesn't have an anxiety disorder. She has a diagnosed, documented, chronic functional neurological condition that requires ongoing medical management. The doctor provided detailed notes from the appointment you attended with Helena, notes that clearly outlined the diagnosis, the prognosis, and the treatment plan. Vanessa's face had gone pale. I never said she had anxiety. You said it was stress-related, mostly psychological, not serious. According to multiple family members I spoke with at the funeral, that's the narrative that's been presented for years. I was trying to protect her. People can be judgmental about chronic illness. You were protecting yourself, Dr. Chen said quietly, because if Helena's suffering was real and serious, then your father would have had to acknowledge it, would have had to provide support, would have had to see her as something other than a problem to be managed. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. The letter continues. When I learned the truth, I was angry. Then I was ashamed. I asked Dr. Chen what I could do to make this right, and he said the only thing I could do was acknowledge it. So that's what I'm doing now, the only way I have left. Helena, your pain was real. Your illness is real. And you deserved a father who believed you without needing a doctor to confirm it. I'm sorry I wasn't that father. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. The decisions I've made regarding my estate reflect this understanding. I've divided my assets in a way that accounts for the medical and financial hardships Helena has faced due to her condition, and for the burden that condition will continue to present. Vanessa, you have been well compensated for your work with the company through salary and benefits. You will receive additional inheritance, but not the majority. Helena, I've set up a medical trust to ensure you have access to quality care for the rest of your life. The house and the majority of liquid assets will go to you, because you will need them. This is not favoritism. This is justice, as late and inadequate as it may be. The letter ended. Mr. Morrison set it down. Silence. Then Vanessa spoke, her voice tight. This is insane. He was sick. The medication affects judgment. He was lucid, Dr. Chen said firmly. I evaluated him extensively. He knew exactly what he was doing. Helena manipulated him. She always does this, plays the victim, makes everyone feel sorry for her. Vanessa. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Stop. She turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Not anger, not control, fear. You lied to him, I said. You lied to everyone, about my diagnosis, about my symptoms, about everything. I was trying to help. You were trying to control the narrative. Because if Dad knew the truth, he might actually pay attention to me. And you couldn't have that. That's not... I went to your apartment once, Dr. Chen interrupted quietly, to drop off some of your father's medical files. I saw the pill bottles in your bathroom. Antidepressants. Anti-anxiety medication. You've been dealing with your own mental health issues for years, haven't you? Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. There's no shame in that, Dr. Chen continued, but you projected your own fear of being seen as weak onto your sister. You convinced yourself that if she was dramatic and difficult, then you could be the strong one, the capable one, the one your father valued. Get out of my head, Vanessa whispered. I don't need to be in your head. I've seen this pattern dozens of times. Siblings who cope with parental emotional neglect by creating hierarchies, by deciding one person gets to be worthy and the other doesn't. He looked at me. But that hierarchy was always false. You were both suffering. She just chose to make you carry it alone. Mr. Morrison pulled out another document. The specifics of the estate distribution are detailed here. Helena, the house is yours, free and clear. The medical trust is substantial enough to cover treatment, medication, and any adaptive equipment you might need. Additionally, there are liquid assets totaling approximately $3.2 million. I couldn't process that number. $3 million. The money didn't make up for the years of pain, the isolation, the gaslighting, but it meant I wouldn't have to fight insurance companies anymore, wouldn't have to choose between medication and rent, wouldn't have to make myself smaller to fit into a budget that didn't account for chronic illness. Vanessa, you'll receive the remaining liquid assets, approximately $1.8 million, as well as the option to continue as CEO of the company or to sell your shares at current market value. Vanessa stood up abruptly. This is a mistake. I'm contesting this. You can try, Mr. Morrison said calmly, but your father anticipated that possibility. He had 3 separate psychological evaluations done in the last 2 months of his life. All confirmed full mental competency. He recorded video testimony explaining his reasoning, and he had witnesses, including Dr. Chen, attest to his lucidity and intent. Vanessa looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw it finally crumble. The facade, the control, the absolute certainty that she was right. I was a good daughter, she said, and her voice cracked. I stayed. I helped. I gave up everything for him. You gave up everything to be the favorite, I said softly. But it didn't work, did it? Because at the end, he saw the truth. She grabbed her purse and walked out, didn't slam the door, just left, the way she always did when things got uncomfortable. I sat there, staring at the letter on the table. Mr. Morrison and Dr. Chen gave me space, murmuring quietly to each other while I processed. My father had seen me, too late, but he'd seen me, and somehow that mattered. Dr. Chen walked me out afterward. We stood on the sidewalk in downtown Dallas, traffic rushing past, the sun bright and warm on my face. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I don't know. I've spent so long just surviving. I haven't thought about actually living." "Your condition is manageable, Helena. With proper care and financial stability, you can have a good life." "Can I?" "Yes, different from what you imagined, but good." I believed him. 3 months later, I moved into Dad's house, our house now. It felt strange at first, walking through rooms that smelled like him, touching furniture he'd touched, sleeping in a space that held so many complicated memories. But slowly, I made it mine. I hired a housekeeper. Not because I couldn't clean, but because on bad days, I needed help. I renovated the downstairs bedroom into an accessible space for when my symptoms flared. I planted a garden in the backyard, something I'd always wanted but never had the energy or resources for. I found a new doctor closer to home, started a treatment plan that actually worked because I could afford the medications that weren't covered by insurance, joined a support group for people with chronic neurological conditions, and met others who understood what I'd been through. I haven't spoken to Vanessa since the reading. I heard through family that she sold her shares in the company and moved to Colorado. Started over. Maybe that's what she needed. Maybe not. I don't know, and honestly, I'm okay with not knowing. Some people asked if I forgave her. I don't think forgiveness is the right word. I understand her better now. I see the scared girl who thought love was conditional, who believed she had to be perfect to be worthy, who couldn't tolerate vulnerability in herself or anyone else. But understanding doesn't erase damage. And I'm allowed to protect myself from people who hurt me, even if I understand why they did it. Dad's letter sits in a frame on my desk. I read it sometimes when I'm having a bad day, when the pain is bad or the brain fog is thick or I feel like giving up. Your pain was real. 4 words that changed everything. I was 34 years old when I finally learned what it felt like to be believed, to have my reality validated, to know that my suffering mattered. It shouldn't have taken that long. It shouldn't have required a diagnosis from a specialist, a revelation from a doctor, a deathbed acknowledgement from my father. But it did, and I survived anyway. This story, while dramatized, is inspired by the real experiences of countless individuals who have lived in the shadow of a sibling, constantly compared and chronically overlooked. Being genetically identical yet emotionally discarded teaches you something profound. Your worth was never determined by who saw you, but by who you chose to become when no one was looking. These aren't just stories. They are lessons in self-worth, resilience, and the courage to choose yourself when no one else does. Before you go, I want to ask you, have you ever been constantly compared to a sibling or someone close? How did that shape who you are today? And for those who felt invisible in their own families, what was the moment you decided to finally see yourself? Do you think it's possible to forgive someone who made you doubt your own reality? Or is distance sometimes the kindest choice? If this story resonated with you, if you felt the pain, the struggle, and ultimately the liberation, write the word "believed" in the comments so I know you stayed until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching from? I'd love to know where this message is reaching. If you found value in this story, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change how you see yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's still fighting to be seen. And don't forget to click on the next video in the cards above, because every story here carries a message worth hearing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you were never half of anyone. You were always whole.